Are you a manager who is eager to change the trajectory of your career? I have spent the last 23 years as a Fortune 50 leader learning from other industry leaders how to break free from limiting beliefs and habits. On the Might in Motion podcast, we focus on the 4 M's: motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. We bring you leaders from Fortune companies, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Their stories of living their own might in motion will inspire you to create your own action plan and achieve your goals. Welcome to Might in Motion. Today's episode of Might in Motion is brought to you by Pantheon FM, Fortunes Magnified. Pantheon FM is changing the world through entrepreneurship. In this community, you will find everything you need to create, amplify, and monetize your world-changing business. Join us at pantheon.community/register/LAUA. Today, I'm really excited to share with you Zach White. He is a game-changing career coach for driven engineers. He has worked with hundreds of leaders at top companies worldwide to achieve breakthrough career success while avoiding burnout. Zach is the founder and CEO of Oasis of Courage, a fast-growing company with unique and proven coaching programs exclusively for engineering and technology professionals. He also hosts a top-rated podcast, The Happy Engineer. As a coach for engineering leaders, Zach understands the journey firsthand, holding both a bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering and spending over a decade building his career in the Fortune 200. Zach is now affectionately known as the world's best lifestyle engineer and your coach. Zach, as a fellow engineer, welcome to Might in Motion.
Let's do this. Mariana, what a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that kind intro. This is going to be great.
I'm excited. I am from a long line of engineers, actually. So
Okay.
A little known fact my audience may not know, I have an industrial engineer from Georgia Tech. My father was an electrical engineer from Manhattan College, and my grandfather was an electrical engineer from Georgia Tech way back in the day when there wasn't I-75, 85 going right straight through the campus. So I am so excited to talk to a fellow engineer.
I love that. I feel like I just got the inside track that nobody else has.
Nobody. I don't think I've
That's
said that
amazing.
at all in like 80 episodes. So you're welcome.
I'm honored.
So what inspired you to go into engineering in the first place, specifically mechanical?
Like yourself, I come from an engineering pedigree. My dad's an electrical engineer, went to Purdue, which is also where I went for undergrad, boiler up. And I will say this, my form of rebellion was, instead of doing electrical engineering, going into mechanical, going
You
a
are
whole different
such a
direction.
rebel.
Yeah, such a rebel, right? No, I just always had that influence growing up. Math and science came naturally to me. I was the kid who, soldered circuits in the basement with my dad as a, young kid growing up, and playing with LEDs and batteries I thought was cool. So I had that knack. I had an interest, and I will acknowledge my uncle as well. He's in business. And I remember a conversation in high school with my uncle, and was in this mode of debate. Do I want to study business and marketing, or do I want to study engineering? And he pulled me aside and said, look, it's really easy. If you're not sure, do engineering, because you can always go back and start a business or do something in business. But if you go study business first, good luck getting back into engineering. And so I'm really, really happy for that counsel at the time. And of course, once an engineer, always an engineer. I'm a big fan. But yeah, just grew up in it, loved it, and got my ME degree at Purdue. The rest is history.
I love that story because it really resonates with me. I was thinking about a career in the theater, and my dad kind of gave me similar advice. Right? And here I am, many decades later, I'm creating my own stage. So I love that. And I love that you bring up you were inspired as a kid. And I actually stole this from my daughter. She had library day at school, and she came home with structural engineering, a book. Structural engineering. He has already
Awesome.
apparently read electrical engineering and robotics. So, hey, you know what? Teach your kids young. Let them play. Let them take stuff
Absolutely.
apart. It's fun. So, you ended up at Purdue, you've got your undergrad, you got your master's, and then at some point, having a career at a Fortune 200 company, you made a big pivot, and now you have Oasis of Courage. Tell us a little bit more about that. What inspired you to make that pivot, and what do you do through that program?
To understand why this pivot made sense, you first have to back up to a few years prior when I went through my extreme burnout and rock bottom experience in my career as an engineer. And long story short, I made all the classic mistakes of thinking that, for one, working harder and just getting smarter was the road to success in my career, but also becoming very one dimensional in focusing so much energy on career success and always going there when other areas of my life were not working, and getting stuck in my head around that. And ultimately led to my divorce, depression, embarrassment, and a lot of frustration about, how did my really successful life and career path and everything going on end up in this place where ultimately none of that success mattered. I would have traded it all in for an opportunity to redo what led to that, burnout experience. And coming out of that, the grief, working with a therapist, going through a lot of difficult moments, but I also hired my first coach. And I told my coach that I still had a deep desire to be successful in my career, but I needed a new way to approach it. And I needed to shore up this, mindset and my whole life picture, because I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes. And working with that coach was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And my career actually skyrocketed after that. 5 promotions in 5 years, doubled my income, had tons of fun. And people take notice, right? When you go from depressed and divorced and frustrated to happy and crushing it and getting everything you want out of career and life, they ask questions. And I wanted to provide answers, so I started capturing, well, what did I do? What was it that worked? What clicked? What didn't click? How did I change my strategy? How did I shift my mindset? And as an engineer, what did I have to do differently than, the typical life coach might bring to the table? And I started distilling all that into, a series of actions and systems and steps that worked for me, and sharing it with others. And it resonated with people. And so I went off and trained as a coach because I thought it would be helpful for my teams in engineering, and I just had an interest in it. And now, to answer your original question, in 2019, I then had this kind of epiphany moment while I was fasting for 3 days and doing my quarterly solitude and silence time. And it just hit me like, I love coaching. I love engineering. I'd like to start a business and get into entrepreneurship. And I just never have, because I didn't know what business to start. Why not start a coaching business for engineers and share my passion for this topic as a coach, and fill a gap that, for me, no one was really speaking to engineers the way we needed to hear it. These topics were not new, but it's a really unique audience. Anybody who knows, engineers knows, like, we're kind of a special breed. There's some differences in the way we interact with the world around us. And so that's where Oasis of Courage was born, just taking all of my own journey, distilling it down, and saying, I think ultimately God didn't make me an engineer to be an engineer, but to go help other engineers not make the same mistakes that I did. And so, that was 2019. I quit my job just a couple months after that and leapt into the business with no real idea how it was going to work. Just a basic concept of, I'm going to coach engineers. Let's see what happens. And fortunately, now here we are 4 years plus later. Things have gone really, really well. And there is a huge demand for it. And lots of engineering leaders are burning out, especially at that manager level. It's the toughest place, I think, for so many to get through and not get stuck.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And we love process, we love systems, we like structure, and the way you're talking, and I might be assuming something, but it sounds like you bring some of that to the table that an engineer can consume in a way that makes sense to us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think my clients get the results they get because it's by engineers for engineers.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean uh, you have to be an engineer to get value from these concepts. To your point, I think of it as a frequency. We can all tune in to a different frequency, and it's the same song, but it's on a different frequency. So, my radio is tuned in to 93.1, the engineering frequency of motivational speaking and coaching and life. And these, somebody else who's not an engineer is tuned into 107.5, right? And that's cool too. It's the same song. We're all going after these same core things: fulfillment and happiness and success and growth, and how do I solve this balance equation of life? Like, we all want some of these core similar things, but the way that an engineer needs to hear it and take action on it, to your point, totally different frequency
Yeah.
than somebody who works in sales or in theater or some other world where they're going to hear it differently.
I love that. Now I'm gonna rewind the tape just a little bit because you said something that I found really interesting. You mentioned that this all came to you on a 3-day fast and silence.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about mindfulness as well, and that really struck a chord with me. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did you get into that practice
Hmm.
of actually disconnecting?
I don't remember when I first started, but it's been at least 6 or 7 years ago, where one of my friends invited me to join in a 3-day fast. And I had never
Mhm.
done fasting from food for more than 24 hours in my whole life. And I'd been around people who fasted, and I knew about it. And in the church that I grew up in, occasionally people would do fasts, but it was always like, we're going to fast from sugar or just one thing, caffeine, never, water only for a long time. And so I thought about it. So this is really interesting. I'd like to explore it. And I did it. And the results of that time were extremely powerful, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually as well. And so I built a practice into my life of doing these 3-day fasts once per quarter. And
Mhm.
I have missed quarters on occasion. I haven't been perfect, but actually good timing. I literally just finished one this past weekend. And it's something I look forward to. And so it's, for me,
Mm.
it's water only for 3 days. And it's also cutting out as many inputs in my life as possible. This idea of solitude and silence, get off the phone. Don't watch the news or read. I don't read books, trying to soak up information. I sit with journals and do, writing. It's
Wow.
about processing and output and listening, right? It's about just being within, not trying to absorb and learn. And I really think we're in such a culture of constant bombardment of inputs. I mean, goodness, these devices are in our pockets and they're blowing up, and we're getting Slack messages and Facebook notifications and blah, blah, blah. For me, it's so important to just shut that off. I need it. I need to
Yeah.
cut off the inputs. And so, the physical side is huge. We could talk a lot about the benefits of fasting, but to me, it's not so much, do you need to do water only? Does it need to be 3 days? Ignore maybe the letter of the law. More to me, it's like, do you have a discipline of leaving room to just listen, to let your own
Mhm.
thoughts cut through the noise of all the to-do lists and all the inputs and all the garbage that's going on in our day-to-day life, and just like, be alone with your thoughts. It's a really
Yeah.
powerful place to be.
It is, it's terrifying, but I mean, that's you open the door to so much, especially if you're really just you're journaling, because then it's whatever your thoughts are, you're
Yeah,
putting it on paper, and then you can go back and dissect it and say, well, what does this mean? What did you get out of it? Where is this coming from?
100%. I've never sat in my 3-day fasting periods and nothing good came out of it. It's always rich, like more
Hmm.
clarity. If I have a big decision to make, I always prime that and just like, I'm going to sit down and let this decision just wash over me, and I leave the fast with more clarity. And I love that mindfulness is one of your 4 M's of the core of what you're doing here, because again, It's so easy to let the 95%, our subconscious mind, the unconscious is 95% of the processing power of our nervous system. You're running your life on autopilot and you don't realize it. And when you stop and fast, what happens is that 5% finally gets the voice. It's like your conscious mind wins. You become aware, you become clear, and you start hearing the things that normally you don't hear because you're just running through life. And so highly recommend. And of course, consult a physician if you want to do water only
We're
fasting
not
from food. Be
doctors.
smart. Yep, not here to provide medical advice, but I have found it to be a tremendous asset to my continued growth to schedule these intentional periods where it's just about listening and processing and output rather than this constant absorption and input that we're in.
I love it. I'm going to have to put that on my list as a personal challenge. Right. Because do you have kids? I don't even know if you have kids, but like that,
I don't.
I would
I
love some
don't.
silence just from that.
Yeah. If you can get away, to your point, get out of your normal environment as well. I don't do this every time, but sometimes I'll even leave my wife behind and go to a hotel and go out in a cabin in the woods or go someplace alone. And again, you just take the blank journal, a couple of pens, and disappear. It's really powerful.
That's really, really cool. So you have we'll go back to the coaching group now. Sorry for that little sidebar, but
Oh, it's good.
it's really interesting to me. What's been one of the biggest transformations that you have seen in others of people that you have mentored or coached, either before you started Oasis of Courage or maybe during Oasis of Courage?
I could tell you so many stories. It's so fun. It's so inspiring. I'll tell you about a client I worked with named Mauricio. And his story he's shared on my podcast and in videos before, and he's given me permission to share this, but it's a really amazing experience for him. When we met, he was working as a manager at Spotify. And on paper, Mariana, he had all the boxes checked, right? The great job, the great paycheck, wife, kid, house in the burbs, all the things, right? Incredibly unhappy. Things not working at home. Marriage in a bad place. Relationship at work with his boss strained. Constantly frustrated that he couldn't get promoted and was getting, the run around, the usual suspects of, hey, you're doing great work, just keep doing what you're doing, you're next in line, but nothing happening. Getting to that point where he was so just kind of checked out and burned out at work that he was even asking himself, do I still want to be an engineer? Maybe I want to just go do something else or go back to writing code and stop being a manager. I just want to go back to the last time I was happy again. And all these questions and wrestling and so much negativity in his life at the time we met. And I'll just be honest, for any engineer to have a conversation with a coach and for a coach to tell you, hey, we're going to have some conversations and we're going to do some exercises and work through a process and a system and some tools that's going to help you create clarity and transform your life, and you're going to be happy and you're going to get moving in your career and it's going to fix these problems. Most engineers look at that and they're like, what? Are you kidding? Like, I'm not so sure that's real. Like, you got to be making that crap up. But he had the courage to step in, and there's no small reason why my business is called Oasis of Courage. It takes courage to say, I'm willing to step out and share this journey with someone and unpack the baggage of my life and say, what do I need to do to become someone different? And Mauricio started down this journey, and I'll tell you the moment. We have an exercise in our program where we dig into your life purpose. And most people think, isn't this like for Buddhist monks in Tibet to sit around and spend their whole life trying to figure out the meaning of life and purpose? Like, it's such a big topic. Why are we doing this here? Let's get tactical, talk about career. Isn't that why we're here? Well, we do this life purpose exercise. And Mauricio had this light bulb moment. A true, like, I used to think this. Now I'm aware that it's this type of moment as he went through that exercise. And what he discovered about himself was that the most important thing for him, his purpose, was to be useful.
Ooh, that's powerful.
It was that simple. I need to be useful. And when I am to the people around me, it feels awesome. I feel awesome. It impacts the world in a powerful way. And it's such a simple concept, right? But it was something that was blind to him before, and it became clear when he did this exercise. And he literally showed up to our coaching call the next day, and you could just tell he was just like totally different person. And he's like, I can't believe it. I realized that what's been missing this whole time is I have not really felt useful. I haven't felt like I've done anything for anyone in a way that mattered. And so today I'm going to do this, this, and this. And it was so amazing to watch him start to connect the dots. And that was just a catalyst to now having the actions to move the needle on what actually mattered in terms of results. But sometimes it is just these little distinctions where somebody realizes where I've gotten in my own way and I haven't been living out the values and the purpose that matter most to me, because the way I describe it is I'm living my life by default instead of living my life by design. And he started designing his life around this idea of being useful. And now he's gotten a promotion. He's at Meta. He's crushing it. We actually just re-released his episode of the podcast because it was that good. And he told me when we caught up just the other day, I'm happier than ever. I'm at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And I have no stress in my life. I'm just crushing it. I just love it. And it's like, what? Here's most people are like barely keeping their head above water, and he's in a really tough middle management band at Meta and has no stress in his life. He's like, just because of these things that I uncovered about myself, and then the strategies and the tools on how to actually act on that in a way that works. So,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
It's fun.
So a lot of folks that listen to this podcast are in that middle management space. Are there any tips that you could give them as they're kind of starting to coach their own teams, right? And they're not a professional coach like you, and they haven't gone through all the classes and the journey that you've gone through. But maybe is there a trick or a tip that you can provide them? They can be like, oh, you know what? I should approach the situation in a different way, as they're dealing with maybe direct reports that are similar to Maurizio, who's like, they just seem burned out or not inspired or not wanting to be there, but you want your team to be there, right? You want them to have that joy.
Yes. The concept that matters here is understanding that leadership is a continuum. And when you get in that manager role, you need to be aware that how you show up in every moment is going to land somewhere on this continuum. So let's talk about what it is. In one direction, one end anchoring the continuum is a mode of operation or a behavior that we'll call directing. It's just telling people what to do. I have the answer. This is what you need to do. Do A, then B, then C, and you'll get a good outcome. It's my priorities. It's my agenda. You're the person who's going to receive from me what to do. It's directing. That's not always a bad thing, by the way. I don't mean to paint it in a negative light. There's a reason that there's a job title called director. Somebody does need to decide where we're going and pick and steer the ship. So directing is one side of the continuum. On the other side, we'll call it coaching. Coaching is a completely different behavior. It's not about me telling you what to do. It's not about my agenda. It's not about A, then B, then C. It's about me helping you get clear on your agenda. It's about me letting you decide what needs to happen, becoming the most resourceful version of yourself. It's about your transformation, not about my results or agenda, right? Now, here's the kicker. Directing gets results faster than coaching. Coaching is slow. In fact, in coaching, I'm going to let you fail so that you can learn. In directing, I'm not going to let you do anything other than what I tell you to do. Right? So it's faster to direct, but directing has no long-lasting impact on helping the other person get better. It doesn't transform anything. Coaching has a legacy level of enduring transformation. You're helping that person become better. When you coach them, they're no longer dependent on you. When you direct them, they're only dependent on you. Because they don't know what to do if you don't tell them. So when you're a new manager and you've got this team, looking up to you, what we tend to do, especially as engineers, but I think it's true of everybody, we take the fact that we were great individual contributors, we were really good at getting the work done. And that is all about me doing the thing.
Yep.
And that lends itself to a directing type of leadership style where you become a manager and you say, all right, now you're going to do da, 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 and you're going to do da, 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 and you're going to do da, da, da. And everything falls into that mode and you don't understand how to coach at all. So I would just encourage you, if you're new, to really consider, hey, what's the way that you need to show up with your team? How can you start just asking more questions, letting them make more decisions, giving them the vision, but letting them figure out the how? You tell them what, give them some autonomy to work through the how, and let them make some mistakes when you have the luxury of time or some space and resources to do so. There's going to be other times where you do need to step in and just say, hey, I've already done this. I know exactly how to do this. This is what we need to do. But if you want to have an enduring, lasting, transformational impact on the individuals and the organization, then you need to show up as a coach. The best way to become a great coach as a manager is to be coached by a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you hear this and you're like, okay, the concept makes sense, but I have no idea how to do that, frankly, the best investment you can make is to go work with a great coach, because that's the easiest and fastest way to become one, is to sit underneath one and experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that resonates well with me, because I do think, I love the continuum concept of coaching to directing. And we all know people that sit too much in one end versus the other.
That's right.
And you have to be able to slide, right? Because there are times
100%.
where it's an emergency, it's whatever, and it's just, you just got to go. You got to go and you got to do what needs to get done. But if you are constantly operating on that end of the spectrum, you're, number one, you're probably not going to have teams that are really resonating with you as a leader. And number two, you're not going to succeed in the long run because you haven't created other people within your team that can level up.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Your long-term success is dependent on your successors. And if you don't train up a team that can take your job, you're going to be stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, okay, so one last question, Zach. If you could go back and talk to Zach from 10 years ago, what advice would you give him?
Zach from 10 years ago was one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And the dimension was my limited view of what success meant at that time, which was built almost exclusively around my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so embarrassed and afraid to step into the domains of my life that were not working, like my marriage, my health, these other areas, that I lied to myself. I kept secrets from the world. I didn't tell anybody what was going on, and I lied to myself, and I just said, you know what? Life is good. This is working. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because my career is growing, and I'm moving towards success. And after this next promotion, and after I have a little bit more financial runway, and after I get to this next place, this milestone that I'm imagining in the future, then I'll have more time to come back and fix my marriage. Then I'll be able to, start doing a little better in the exercise. And then I'll come back and take care of all these other areas of my life. And so the thing that I would tell myself 10 years ago is, that's the runner-up mindset. That's the fallacy of, the thinking brain tricking yourself. That's the voice of fear. And Zach, you got to have the courage right now to address these areas of your life that aren't working, because you're never going to get there if you don't address it here. And if you can't be happy now, then you won't be happy then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a long way to say Zach 10 years ago was afraid, and he needed to peel the blinders off, stop keeping secrets, and stop lying to himself, and deal with what was not working in my life.
Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. Now, whether or not he would have listened 10 years ago, I don't know.
he
But
he
the
was a
fact is
little
that
bit stubborn. That's true. That's true.
you're listening now, and that's the key thing, right?
Yeah.
So if this has resonated with anybody that's listening and they're like, man, I need to follow that process. I need to connect with Zach. I'm going to put all these in the show notes because you've got a lot. You've got your YouTube, you got your Instagram, you got a little bit of everything. But what's kind of the one place where you would want to direct people to either get in touch with you or learn more about your Oasis of Courage program?
If you want to absorb more of this conversation, wherever you tuned into this podcast, just go jump over to the Happy Engineer podcast, and 130 episodes more of me you can consume. But if you're an engineer and you're in management and this is something you need to take action on, then that top website, oasisofcourage.com, go there, click the link right at the top that says book a call, and grab a free chat with my team, and let's figure out what is going on. Where are you stuck? What's not working? We're going to help you get really clear on those bottlenecks and where you need to take action. And if it's a fit for you to be a part of our programs, then we'd love to support you in that. And you'll get a free session with me. We'll dig really deep and build that roadmap. And if you need help executing it, then we'd love to have you in our programs. So oasisofcourage.com. If you're an engineer and you need help on this, let's do it.
This has been great. I love trying to jot down notes while I'm talking to folks. And so I've got a few for me. The number one for me is I got to try your 3-day fast silence journaling extravaganza, because that's probably the second time that's crossed my path in a month, and that might be a sign,
Ooh,
right?
you're getting a nudge.
You're getting a nudge, and it might not just be a nudge at this point. You have to leave room to listen, and you leverage those 3 days to listen internally. But I think that's a really great nugget for anybody. You got to leave room to listen to your team too.
Yeah.
And which goes right into your leadership as it being a continuum where you have your coaching on one end, directing on the other. Coaching is helping your team, the individual you're supporting, create their own agenda, their own directive, versus directing is basically telling everybody this is the how, the when, the everything. Have courage to step into the issues, which your conversation just now about the Zach from 10 years ago really speaks to. You have to have the courage to get over the fear, because if you don't move from here, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And to get out of that one-dimensional type of mindset. So those are some of the notes that I jotted down. I know that there are probably a million other nuggets of information on your podcast, The Happy Engineer. And if anybody is interested and they're like, man, this really resonates, go to the website, oasisofcourage.com, and get to know Zach and his team a bit better, because it's amazing stuff. It's amazing what you're doing, Zach. So thank you so much for joining us today on Might in Motion.
Oh, thank you so much. And right back at you. Incredible work. This is the conversation so many people need to hear, and thank you for the work you do. It's amazing.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.